Hi, my friends. So far, it's been a good day today. I went to the woods and spent a good amount of time there. Then I went out and I got a nice haircut. Came home, did some things. Took a nap a while ago. I felt like taking a nap today. Since I'm not working this week, this feels like a good week to get some extra rest and get my thoughts in order and everything. So I want to talk about some more of my childhood stories. I feel like this is a good time. When I was really young, my dad was always switching jobs. Never really stayed more than would be anywhere from 3 to 5 years in the same place. And that was interesting to say the least because one of the things that happen when you're a child and you're moving from place to place is that, well, there's two things. Number one, it's not very pleasant because when you're finally getting used and comfortable being somewhere, uh, making new friends, knowing new people, especially during school, then all of a sudden you're packing everything and you're going somewhere else. And you got to start that whole process all over again. And at first, that's a bit unsettling because when you're a kid, you meet new people, new friends, you go to new places, and then stuff like that happens, and you have to go somewhere else completely new. Um, in many instances, we were moving states, towns. We never really stayed in the same place for a long period of time, like I was saying, because my dad was always changing jobs. He was always looking for better things when it came down to that, because we were a big family, and and he was never afraid to take that type of risk. And I wouldn't call it a risk because I think he knew what he was doing. Um, he always looked out for himself first in that sense. I guess that was one good quality about my dad, you know. He didn't have many though, but that was a good one. I mean, outside of that kind of thing and being a provider for the family, yeah, he was very different. I'll put it to you that way. I think it had a lot to do with the way he was brought up as well by his own father. No, I don't think his father ever told him that he was loved, because I don't recall. I had this conversation with my mother not that long ago. I don't recall my father ever telling me throughout my entire life that he loved me, like straight up like that. And and my mom, she wasn't one to say it, but the difference was she expressed that with all of her actions. So you knew the difference. It was day and night. because she came, you know, on her side of the family was a different story too, because um, I talked about this before on one of my videos about, you know, the childhood trauma thing with my dad's mother and her sister, and the way that I was treated along with two of my other siblings when we were children compared to my two cousins. But on my mother's side, her parents, my grandparents on her side, they were like the sweetest people that I ever had in my life, and my grandparents on her side of the family are the two people that to this day I miss the most in my life. Because when I came to the United States, they were already getting older, and by the time I went back to Brazil, the first time I did it, they were. My grandfather was already gone at that point, and my grandmother, as I was going to get back on a plane to fly back to the U.S., that was the last time that I saw her. I remember that she gave me this really long, tight hug. She squeezed me so gently and tight at the same time, and she whispered in my ear. And I remember that like it was yesterday. I will never forget that day. And she told me exactly like I'm gonna tell you right now. She told me, this is the last time we are going to see each other. And and I told her, I said, don't say that. And she was like, I know it. So sure enough, shortly after that, I think maybe a year and a half or so went by, and she passed away. My grandparents loved each other dearly, and I think that once my grandfather passed away, the way it felt to me is like she lost the will to live, and her life changed dramatically when he was not around anymore, and you could see the impact on her health and her physical body. She lost a good amount of weight, and she was not, you know, a heavy person to begin with. She was always fit, so as she lost weight, she didn't look that healthy at all. So going back to the moving part, you know, about my dad moving jobs and stuff. I think one of the best things that ever happened to me in that sense was the fact that I learned how to become adaptable at a very early age. So even though the first few times that this was being done, the moving thing, you know, going from place to place, state to state, town to town, different schools, meeting new children, making new friends, going to new places. At first, obviously, it was uncomfortable and unsettling, but once you know we did it enough times, to me, it felt exciting as a new opportunity to become better, to know different people, to meet different people, go to different places. I started looking at it as a new adventure in life. You could put it that way. And being a child, I look back at that and I smile. You know, I feel pretty proud of how I handled all these things back then. I think I joined the Boy Scouts when I was about maybe, I was almost 11 years old. I was on the cusp of turning 11. The reason why I remember that so well is because 11 is the age, it's the breaking point between, the youngest. I don't recall how you call that in English. I think it's Cub Scout, Cub Scout, and then you go from Cub Scout to Scout. Because in Brazil we have different terminologies, but it's the same thing. The age, the age groups that involve different stages of the Boy Scouts are the same. Like it's a universal thing worldwide. And I joined the Scouts because I thought it was a really good opportunity. The first time I saw Boy Scouts, and I was really enamored by it. That would be the right word. I remember going to like it was some sort of community like barbecue thing, and I went with my dad and my whole family, and we were there eating, and the Boy Scouts were like there doing stuff, serving people, and I thought it was so cool. They were wearing these cool uniforms and stuff, and I asked my dad, "Oh, what's that all about?" And he told me, and I was like, I want to do that. That looks like so cool. So I ended up joining, and throughout my life, I was a part of that movement from 10 years old until I was about, I think I was somewhere between 24 and 25, maybe. That's how long I stayed there. So once I reached, I think I was about maybe 22 ish or 23, then I became a Chief Scout. And I worked with teenagers, for a good couple of years. And it was great. The things you learn, what drew me in about the whole Scout movement was the fact that the community aspect of things, the brotherhood aspect of things, learning all these things about being in the wild, being in nature, um, learning a lot of different survival skills, of being able to be completely independent if you're out by yourself in the woods, how to make, shelter for yourself, how to make fire by yourself. All of these things, I've learned how to cook when I was in the Boy Scouts, and then throughout my childhood, I always loved watching my grandparents cook and stuff, and everybody in the family, because everybody cooked. So I liked watching other people do things and learning how to do those things. But the Boy Scout thing was really cool. I really enjoyed it. Um, we used to make these big fire camps, when we did this like big group campings, and we had all these activities, and we formed this circle around the fire, and we told stories, and we hold our hands together, we sing songs together. um, Very, very, very human social interacting aspect of brotherhood and looking out for each other, teaching each other valuable things. And I think that's why I was drawn to it, because it felt homey to me. It's like I've always had this longing since I was very young of, being able to be a part of something where everyone is helping uplift each other. So it was a very good experience in my life, for sure. And then the moving thing with the adaptability, I think it helped me a lot throughout my life as I got older, because I've learned how to detach from things, people, situations, jobs, all kinds of stuff like that, by just moving on from things and not looking back, and just focusing on the path ahead, because this is one of the aspects of living life that makes you succeed and is very helpful for you for internal growth. Self-reliance, self-understanding, understanding the importance of independent, being independent, yeah. Because like I said on one of my videos previously, I've I've lived on hermit mode now for like 18 plus years, and if there's one thing that hermit mode taught me, the aspect of being self-reliant and self-independent, and you learn so much from it. You learn so much about yourself when you live by yourself, because not only do you learn how to budget your finances extremely well, because you're by yourself, you don't have codependency of any kind. You have to rely on yourself for everything. And yeah, it can be rough sometimes, I'm not gonna lie. But like I said, nothing lasts forever in life, so we all have our rough patches here and there. But learning the importance of independence, I think it's extremely powerful for someone's self-growth and self-understanding, of knowing that if you choose to be by yourself, which is a choice, you understand that it's going to be perfectly fine. People have this misconception that you have to be with somebody, and I'm not saying that this is how I am going to live the rest of my life. Far from it. But I feel that for me, it took me a long time to reach this point of being totally one with myself and comfortable with myself, to fully understand all the things that I went through in my own personal journey, and to be able to heal so many different aspects of myself that needed to be looked at very deeply, to be understood, so I could finally acquire the knowledge, the wisdom, and the self-understanding that I needed to know myself fully. And I'm not saying that this is how it's going to be for everyone and it's going to take that long for everybody, but in my personal situation, that's just how it went for me, you know. So I learned how to adapt very early in my life because of this moving all over the place. And once I came to the United States, I moved in here quite a bit as well. Lately, not so much though. But I feel like I'm gonna be doing that again soon. It's unavoidable, you know? And yeah, this is really what I wanted to share with you all today. Um, it's weird how life works sometimes. Oh yeah, I remember this thing. See if I can share this one really quick. I've had this experience when I was probably somewhere between 3 and 4. I went to a store with my mom, and I think she had my sister with her. My sister was still just a baby, so she was carrying my sister, you know. And I went with her to this specific store. I remember it being like some sort of like store that sold fabric for people to make clothing, and they also sold clothing there. And I wandered off from my mother because she had my sister. Like I said, she was carrying her in her arms. So I wandered off from my mother, and somehow in this store I got lost. And it was one of the most traumatic experiences that I ever had in my life. You know, now I remember about these things, and I laugh about it. But when it happened, it wasn't it wasn't anything to laugh about. I remember how I felt, and I entered this absolute state of panic. I was calling my mother all over the place, and I couldn't find her. And then, you know, this older guy, he he approached me. He was very, very kind, very soft, very gentle, and he asked me to explain to him what had happened, and I told him, I was still sobbing and crying. I told him, I lost my mom. I don't know where my mom is. I want my mother. And he was like, do you know where you live? And I told her, yes. He said, can you take me there? And I told him yes, because it was like up the street, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 blocks up the street or something. And so what happened is he brought me back to my house, and he told me, just sit tight here and wait for your mama, cause she will come back. You're gonna be okay. And he helped me calm me down, and I just sat there. I don't remember how long I sat there for. It felt like an eternity though. But it was hours for sure, because by the time my mother got back, she had already been to like the police station. She was totally freaked out. She thought I'd been abducted or some crap like that. And then when she got back home, I was sitting there, in front of the door waiting for her to come back. And I was, we saw each other. We both freaked out. We both crying and hugging at each other. And I was like, I'm sorry, mama. I remember this crap like it was yesterday, though. Sometimes I bring this up with my mom, and she always gets a good laugh out of it, too, because she remembers the whole thing. Um, yeah, sometimes stuff happens like that, and, but ever since I was a child, I felt like I was always protected. And that surely was the proof of it, because, this guy that was a completely, stranger to me and my family, approached me, took care of the whole thing, handled it all, brought me back to my place, and I was safe after that. He could have ended in so many bad ways, but he didn't. So yeah, that's a little story there to share, you guys. Um, and that's really all I wanted to talk about today, guys. So, with that said, I love you all very much so. And I will catch you all on the next one. Take care, everyone.